guys, what's up? Sandu here. So today I'll be testing my daily driver power amplifier that I've been using for the last few months in my stereo setup. I've tried several power amplifiers, quite a lot of integrated amplifiers in the last months, but somehow the little KECES S125 always stuck in my head. It simply sounded the way I wanted, and it had all the right ingredients, like a big oversized transformer right here, like an all discrete circuitry, and of course that magical sounding Class A for an undisputed naturalness, easiness and control of the speaker drivers. So I've returned back those integrated amplifiers and power amplifiers, and S125 simply remained as my daily driver. So let's check how it sounds. This time around I will skip its controls and its looks, and I will focus mainly on its technology and what makes it standing out from the rest. I can't deny the amazing power efficiency of the latest Class D amplifiers that are being released lately. Most of the mid-level stuff already moved to this working principle, but the super inefficient, power-draining Class A amplifiers are still very desirable, especially when it comes to high-end audio. Class A amps are still very popular among speaker lovers and headphiles, thanks to their instant power delivery and that amazing driver control. However, there is a huge difference between designing a 5-watt or a 500-watt fully Class A amplifier. The latter one would look like a side-by-side fridge that should be connected to a nuclear power plant for the best results. Different ways have been developed so that an amp could look more like a box and not like a fridge, and still offer some of that power in the magical sounding Class A. That is mostly why the unit I am testing today is operating in Class A at low power levels and then moves to Class AB at higher power levels. KECES mentioned that it offers about 3 to 4 watts in Class A, and then it moves to AB at higher power output. There is one legendary designer that believes the first watt is the most important one. I'm no audio engineer, but I'm going to agree with Nelson Pass on this, and KECES seems to also agree with that. Most of the current production integrated and power amplifier makers started moving to Class D with their newest creations. On the other hand, KECES thinks that you can't preserve natural harmonics with a design like that, and that is precisely why the E40 integrated and the S125 that I'm testing today are quite different sounding compared to a lot of mid-level amplifiers that are being released. S125 uses a fully discrete input-to-output circuitry with no op-amps in its signal path. I can't count all those output transistors, but I see a lot of them, and some of the bigger ones are directly glued to some huge heatsinks to cool down and prolong their lives. They used a single 1 kV toroidal transformer, and about 40,000 microfarads sitting in some big capacitors will be filtering all that power. As for the power output, as its name suggests, it will provide a continuous power of 125 watts in 8 ohms, 225 in 4 ohms, and if you bridge two of them working as a team, you'll get 360 in 8 ohms and somewhere around 650 watts in 4 ohms, and of course a zero-channel crosstalk. All in all, the spec sheet looks really promising. It's more like amazing to me, and it's something that I would normally see in much higher priced amplifiers. Okay everybody, I'm eager for some music, so let's play some. I'm using it for about 3 months now, so I think I formed a very solid opinion about its performance. I have swapped in and out quite a lot of amplifiers in this period of time, of course with the same speakers, so I could better understand all its pros and all its cons. And in the end, all of those amplifiers went back, but S125 remained as my daily driver, and that already tells a very short story about its performance. So Bucard S400 loudspeakers that you see behind me, they have a small cabinet size, that is true, and also a pretty high sensitivity numbers, but the passive radiator on the back will start pounding your chest only with very serious power. So feed them some fat juicy watts, and that passive driver on the back will start drawing simply a much bigger picture, immersing yourself quite a lot more with your music. S400 loudspeakers behind me, they sounded mellow and plain boring with few amplifiers, with little to no depth information or soundstage, and they sounded much better with the KECES E40, the smaller one, integrated amplifier. and absolutely ass-kicking alive and really punchy with free amplifiers. And those were the Hegel H190, KECES Studio EX-M7 and the KECES S125. The latest ones are looking more like overkill amplifiers for S400 loudspeakers, and to some degree that is actually correct, but I can assure you that the best control of the drivers and instant start and stop of the drivers and some of the punchiest dynamics were achieved only with these three wild horses. I've used that AudioByte HydraVox stack, it worked as a main DAC for this job, but I also used that Matrix Audio Element X working as a streamer and a DAC. I also added a benchmark HPA for working as a preamp, and the S125 was doing all the heavy lifting. The hardest task of any amplifier to perfectly control, sustain and naturally decay is actually a bass note, and Long After You Are Gone by Chris Jones is not a track that you would normally use to test the bass performance of your stereo setup or of your amplifier. But I beg to differ because this track has some of the nicest bass layers that I've heard from a single bass guitar. So S125 was immediately pumping more air around me, and I felt it heavier and much denser with every single note. Low end was breathing, it was pulsating, and S125 was considerably improving its sustain. A longer bass note can be sustained only with powerful amplifiers that are capable of bigger voltage and current swings. My former Barson audio bank had a little bit of residual noise even after being connected to a high-end DAC, but the Element X working as a streamer plus as a DAC already takes care of a lot of that digital jitter and sends clear signals to the HPA4 and then to the S125, so take that into consideration. But the good part is that S125 already incorporates DC servo circuits that will simply kill the unwanted noise that is coming from the source with the help of negative feedback. I've approached my speakers and I went full power on the preamp, and all I've heard was simply an absolute silence between passages with these speakers. Compared to my former integrated and power amplifiers that I had used in the past, this one is a clean sounding unit and also a very transparent sounding unit. But don't expect the last drop of transparency coming out of this unit. Yes, it uses only discrete components that translates into a cleaner sounding, in a detailed sounding with a see-through transparency. But it wasn't as crystal clear compared to that KECES Studio EX-M7 or like that Hegel H190. I did hear additional details compared to my own integrated and power amplifiers that I had in the past. That is true. It doesn't force the listener on some particular parts in the frequency response. It presents your music in a very engaging and easy way. I'm actually so behind this review because after pressing play, I simply forget that I need to take some notes, that I need to write something down. So I had absolutely the same feelings about that KECES Studio EX-M7, where it mostly wanted to impress with its easygoing nature, with its naturalness, and with that incredible grip over the speaker drivers. While other technicalities, although being there as well, were not asking for some spotlights. So most of the Class A and Class AB amplifiers will impress you more with their smoothness and naturalness, and less so with that with sharp details, and that is happening exactly in here too. As for the transient response, now this is where those 3 to 4 watts of power, of Class A power, will be showing their muscles the most and will be outplaying amplifiers like my former Cambridge Audio Azure 851A. So this is a fast sounding unit and will be increasing those dynamics almost instantly. My former bass test proved that it renders them in a very fast way. It knows how to sustain a bass note and how to decay naturally a bass note as well. I'm mostly into energetic type of music, and I always kept coming back to the S125 only because it knows how to impress a transient response nut as myself. Speed of delivery was really nice, and the kick in the chest that followed also was impressive. Bass slam was outstanding, and it becomes really addictive very fast with some electronica tracks. I'm actually very fond of some older electronica which I've grown with, and when I'm testing a brand new amplifier or a brand new speaker, I always test their limits with such music. The impact, the scale and the layering that followed, with notes jumping off the walls and bumping into my body, was something that I will never forget with my old electronica and with this amplifier. So S125 was truly made for this kind of music. As for the soundstage and depth, usually Class A and Class AB amplifiers are borrowing some of the best rates of tube-based amplifiers, like their easygoing nature, like their expanded soundstage size. So this one offered like an exploded view of my music, where with a very distinct space between each and every note. So it surprised me that even crowded music didn't sound cluttered or upfront or anything like that. So a nice power reserve and a huge headroom on top, like this one has always a very positive impact in terms of depth and stage size. So it happens so many times, and it feels no different on this one. So when it comes to how much air it can move around and compared to all amps I've tried before, it is easily in my top 3 list. So it really shined with tracks like Sweet 16 by Junior Wells, by increasing the stage size and depth, by playing with my imagination, and with notes simply jumping from left to right and vice versa. The note placement in the room was simply spot on, and I could easily appreciate the distance between each instrument. In terms of frequency response, after swapping quite a lot of amplifiers in a span of few months, the biggest difference of them all was in terms of frequency response and also in terms of their tonality. So S125 stood out immediately with its powerful and really robust bass performance, with a natural and full-bodied mid-range performance, and also with a calmer top end that was rounding the treble performance for longer listening sessions. Bass was delivered raw, so without too many warnings, so it will be hitting and pounding your chest pretty nicely. It goes deep, it goes fast, and with a pretty nice force too. So I felt it in my chest, and my neighbors felt it too. I'm told that they are listening only to high quality music, and it doesn't matter if they want that or not. So bass stood out even from the first days without too much burning. It grabs your attention and it will put butterflies in your stomach. It is not a bass heavy amplifier. It has the right amount of it, so it's quite linear, but executed really well. This is a linear sounding amplifier, but it tilts towards just a little bit towards naturalness and warmth. So the mid-range quantity was increased in this one, so to speak. So while listening to a lot of acoustic music, I felt that warm mid-range, those natural rendition of those mid-tones. So everything that is tied to mid-range, like acoustic instruments, like voices, will be simply pushed forward quite a lot. So you will not find brightness in this one, you will not find thinness or dryness in this one. It's mostly on the opposite camp of things. There is indeed a small increase of the mid-range density with this one for a livelier and colorful musical experience, but not going to lie that I really enjoyed this kind of sound. Treble is considerably smoother sounding, and the top octave or the upper treble was simply rolled off a bit. So I still hear loud and clear, but the outline of those cymbals and the intensity is simply lowered. So there is much less ringing in this one compared to Class D amplifiers, and the sharpness is definitely toned down a bit. Some might like this effect, but others might want just a little bit more sharpness in the treble region. So it might sound like some gibberish nonsense, but it reminds me quite a lot about the performance of those, of the naturalness of those R2R ladder DACs. So this one is having basically the same voicing, especially when it comes to treble performance. It has a relaxed top end and a smoother presentation. So listening to modern, over-processed and over-mastered music is a non-issue anymore. because it smooths out those dips and rises and makes them more manageable. Overall, I've heard lots of naturalness, a linear performance with a gentle roll-off in the treble. It was visceral and vivid sounding most of the time, and on rare occasions it was even disappearing from the acoustic chain with that intoxicating liveliness. I also did a short comparison with a Hegel H190 and a direct comparison with the KECES Studio EX-M7, but since I don't want to make this video super long or boring, please check out my written review below. It's on chapter 7, I think. It's one click away. Going on into the conclusion, it's very important to have a balanced frequency response and a natural tonality in your setup. So my DACs that I'm using are all linear sounding top to bottom, and HPA4 by Benchmark is also a colorless sounding preamplifier. So it's clear to me that I needed just a little bit of soul in my music, and S125 brought exactly that into my room. So it worked simply flawlessly in my particular setup, and if you are searching for more body hits, for more low end, for more guttural and soul grabbing voices, then it seems like a very good choice. So it was always organic, warm and full-bodied sounding, fast and really impactful sounding. And if these words are resonating with you and your taste, then you should strongly consider this a very good power amplifier at a mid-5 price. It costs only $1,099 in US and 1,400 euros in Europe. I find it extremely competitive at this price point. Hell, it still remains as my daily driver and it's getting my stamp of approval. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. My full in-depth review is waiting on my website. And in case you want to support this channel, please subscribe to it, and thank you for doing that. And as usual, listen to my music, be positive, and I'll see you next time. Cheers guys, bye bye.